Welcome to Wolcen, Lords of Mayhem, an action RPG developed and published by Wolcen Studio. It is built upon the CryEngine, and it shows both shine and flaws. It has the looks of an isometric RPG with hints of Warhammer fashion and the feel of a clunky stroll through Path of Exile. This review will be quick and to the point, hitting key elements, sharing my opinion, and discussing the game's worth. I hope you find it helpful and enjoy. Our primary focus will be on the gameplay, a pounding experience of awe and confusion. As someone who both played and reviewed Wolcen when it first launched in early access back in late 2016, a whole lot has changed and has been improved upon. Even then, though, there's still a lot to be desired and a few key features that feel off or are missing entirely. The game boasts its no class restrictions, stating you choose your own path and play the character you want. We've been seeing features like this appear a lot recently in both old and new entries into the dungeon crawler scene. As you level, experience and skill points are split between two character progression trees. Your first is your attributes, with each level granting points to be spent between ferocity, toughness, agility, and wisdom. Second is your Gate of Fates, an expansive passive skill tree similar to what you would see in Path of Exile. It can be daunting at first with a lot of numbers, words, and percentages meaning literally nothing to you unless you wiki that shit. You can already find a handful of hero builds that will pain train their way through the game's enemies with little to no hassle. A warning, the game's difficulty can spike heavily in certain encounters, and if your build isn't up to par, you're going to have a difficult time progressing. And if your build just isn't working, you can reset passes and attributes at a cost. But with how sparing money is in the game, it's not easy to try out new ways to play without a bit of a grind. Combat is punchy, visually appealing, chaotic, and sometimes downright unresponsive. As the game has no class system, active abilities are linked with your choice of weapon and are cast between the 2 meters of rage and willpower. Each ability can be leveled and upgraded to build upon their respective roles. As you slash, dash, and cast your way through enemies, you will be balancing the ever-battling tug-of-war between your rage and willpower. As abilities and base attacks consume their respective pool, the other meter begins to fill so that you can continue the drums of war by switching your tactics of combat. This is both fun and a challenge. Enemies are varying in variety across the 3 acts of the game, but you will see a lot of the same models in their specific region over and over again. A lot of the combat with your average enemy is a breeze, and aesthetically fun to play. There can be times of frustration, however, with the overall responsiveness. I can't tell you how many times my character has just stood there as I desperately try to slash an enemy mere inches away from me. There are several encounters across each region, from mini dungeons to random mini boss encounters, friendly pawn spawns, loot beetles, and more. You'll have challenging region bosses to battle, and story mission bosses that you either defeat with ease or sprint about the arena screaming for your potions to refill before they whack you with some unrelenting ability. And once you receive your aspect in game, practically every boss encounter can become a complete breeze to complete. Aspects is a special mechanic in Wolcen where you get to temporarily transform into this big godly or demonic being. There are 4 aspects in the game, all with their own abilities. As cool and devastating as they are, they can be the most clunky mechanic to control. I've had the game freeze up in between transformations, wasting what precious time I have to use my aspect. Sometimes the big old boy will get stuck in objects and enemies too, and its animations can feel off. That aside, aspects can easily wipe the floor with 1 or 2 abilities they possess. Luckily, it can take time to gain the required pool of essence before using your aspect, so spare the ability for bosses. There are varying levels of loot to collect, ranging in look and effectiveness for each of the 4 attribute skills, with each piece of armor being customizable with over 100 dies you find and collect across your playthrough. For a small fee, you can walk the world of Wolcen in bright purple and a touch of neon green across mismatched armor pieces. There is a hub area to sell and buy loot, remove jewels, and even purchase upgrades for your abilities that do level as you use them during combat. Travel from dungeons and regions to the hub is completely free with a click of a button. After a small cooldown, you'll be out of combat and selling your dirty boots and shiny swords. Multiplayer is also here, so you can play with friends and family. I never touched the feature, so I don't have anything to say here. However, the game is primarily an online game, even when you're playing solo. You can have a private character, but as far as I can tell, you can't have the same character for offline and online mode. Also, be sure to check what server Wolcen has put you on when you play. My first experience of the game was extremely delayed and laggy. I was completely confused and about to stop playing until I noticed in the top left hand corner that the game said I was connected to an Irish server. As an American in Mountain Time, that explained my initial issues pretty quickly. The endgame mostly features on replayability of the base game. Practically get the best loot, experiment new builds, and unlock rare and difficult side missions. Quirks I've had with the gameplay are minor but consistent. You can't just save wherever you want, you have to complete a mission or get to a specific checkpoint for progress to be saved. Period. Bosses can feel broken or unbalanced at times. I had a region boss continuously spawn mini-boss pawns on top of each other, creating a small army of pain and anguish that continues to grow in size. Sometimes abilities from enemies can feel rough around the edges with little feedback on when and where they will come from. Selling items can feel delayed, or you're accidentally moving the item instead of quick selling it with right click. Loading in and out of mini dungeons feels weird sometimes, like completely unresponsive. I'll have to move my character around to get just the right spot before it sends me in there. A lot of dungeon crawlers have 2 sets of weapon loadouts that you can swap between in combat. That's not here as far as I can tell. I'm not the biggest fan of the camera zoom here either. I really wish you could just pull back a little more. Wolcen's story is interesting at times, but not entirely captivating. Cinematics will be both in-game or pages of art. The in-game story bits range from cool and visually stunning to jumpy and almost poorly animated. The voice acting is pretty good here, in my opinion, but is the dialogue good? Sometimes. To summarize the story without telling you too much, you're an orphan, adopted by a grand general of sorts that trains you and your 2 siblings to be precise killing machines. Little do they, or you, know you are what they call an Wolcen. During a heated battle, your aspect reveals itself. From there, you are exiled from your order and fall into a much bigger grand scheme that can save or destroy the world. So as usual, your character becomes this unstoppable hero that has to destroy a great evil while also having daddy issues. Stating from my previous review, as for the graphics, well, it is utilizing CryEngine, so yes, the game can be gorgeous. They've completely overhauled the character customization from its previous early access state. It's a lot more simple, with just a few presets and color choices here and there. No more sliders. The environments, particle effects, lighting, and overall atmosphere is probably the best you will see to date in an isometric game. Enemies and bosses are visually appealing, if not a bit repetitive at times. It's a beast to run, and it will cost you a decent rig to see some of the more demanding settings. The soundtrack is average at best, to say the least. I can't really recall songs or ambient music, but the sound effects are pretty gratifying. Magic can be very punchy, and again, the voice acting is swell for an indie title. This review weighs heavily on the gameplay side due to it being the biggest driving factor of any isometric action RPG. All in all, the game is still a fun hack and slash, but I just don't think it holds up well against a lot of its current competitors. And at a current asking price of $40, there's a lot more to be expected. The developers do promise constant updates with new acts, gameplay content, quality of life improvements, housing, which was removed from the early access version, and more. As someone who's been playing isometric ARPGs for a long time, from Diablo to Torchlight, Fate, and Paths of Exile, there's just a lot of better options out there at much better prices, with a few supporting amazing modding communities. For newcomers of the genre, I'd have to tell you to look elsewhere, unless the game is on sale. There's still fun to be had here, and I really hope they can clean up the experience. Was this review helpful? Please do let me know. Also, if you've already played Wolcen, Lords of Mayhem, I would like to hear your thoughts on the game as well. Know of any indie games you would like to see me review? Let me know in the comments section below. My name is Alex.